without concern about it. I mean, who knows what do you get into there? And you get if he's sincerely looking for the truth, he's a friend.
We were on page. So, just Tova was here yesterday. Okay. So let's go to page 95 because none of you did that. Page 95. Oh, you were looking at a different book. Okay. You can take a stool for your feet if you like. You want more light? There's four. There are 4 pillows there. You know. Okay. So we've been talking about that the light of Channukah is connecting to the beyond, right? And so in other words, and that's why the Svardim and also the Hasidim, you know, following the Baal Shem Tov, they say Lahadlik Ner Chanukah. They don't say Lahadlik Ner, but Lahadlik Ner Chanukah. In other words, your light. There is a Chanukah candle, and you're lighting it. You understand? You're connecting with something that already exists. So, and that's something beyond. So, the beyond in every mitzvah. So it says in Mishlei, Kinei mitzvah b'Torah or every mitzvah is a candle, and the Torah is light. Which Poshup Pshat means that, in other words, each mitzvah is a specific light, and the Torah is like an all-encompassing light. Reb Leibel Eger says, "Kedei la'asot mitzvah, kedei la'asot mashu amiti, in order to do a mitzvah, in order to do something real, tzarich liyot me'ever la'atzmecha, you have to be beyond yourself. Tzarich liyot mu'ar, you have to be enlightened or illuminated." What does that mean? So Reb Shlomo explains. Kamuvan. It's understood you can do a mitzvah without light. And possibly you fulfilled your obligation. But that's not what that's not what is meant in the verse that every mitzvah is a candle and the Torah is light. L'mashal, for example. Nishamer Shabbat, I'm keeping Shabbos. Nilo Aveid, not working. And I close my business. And in the gefilte fish. I stay at home and I eat gefilte fish. Ze yafe. Avol eifo ha'or shel Shabbat. So it's very nice, but where is the Shabbos light? Eifo ha'me'ever shela. Where is the beyondness of your connection? Yesh gam Torah she'inena or. There's also Torah learning that is not light. Do lachem, know that efshar shemishu yeda hakol al Shabbat. It's possible for somebody to know everything about Shabbos. V'filu yitin aleha haftzarot, can even give lectures. V'chol zot lo yishmor Shabbat, and it's still possible they won't keep Shabbos. Ech ze yachol liyot? How could that be? Page 96. Because his learning and his knowledge, they're without light. Right? So, in other words, the mitzvah itself is like the vessel, right? You have a cup, you have a vessel, but doesn't mean that there's something in it, right? The mitzvah is a vessel, and the light of the mitzvah is what fills the vessel. So you can do a mitzvah and you're not necessarily bringing down the light. נכון? גם ביחס אנוש, also in relation to people, in people's relations. יש עם אור ויש בלי אור. There are relations with light and relations without light. לפעמים אתה פוגש מישהו, sometimes you meet someone שלא כל כך אכפת לך ממנו, that you don't really care so much about him. אתה לוחץ לו יד ואומר לו שלום, you shake his hand and you say shalom, in other words, you're being polite, בלי אור, but there's no light. ולפעמים אתה פוגש מישהו, sometimes you meet someone שאתה ממש אוהב, you really love them, זה שלום אחר לגמרי, the way you say shalom is altogether different, נכון? זה שלום עם אור, it's shalom with light. כי הנשמה שלך מעורבת, because your soul is involved. Right? So, I've mentioned in the past, if you remember, good. If not, it's good to hear it. And even if you do, it's good to hear it again. The last Mishnah in Masechet Brachot speaks about a number of things. And one of them is, it says, Mishakil Kilu Haminin, that when the Apikorsim were corrupting things. Now, the Apikorsim in those days were not people there's a story about this young maskil. You know what I mean by maskil? From the period of the Enlightenment, from the period of Enlightenment in Jewish history in the 1800s. This young maskil, that was like a movement that was like sort of like the beginning of secularization. So he comes to this elder maskil, and the older one says to him, so what do you think of the argument between Tosfos and the Rosh and the Morad of Zion there? So the young maskil says, I don't know. So then we talk a few more minutes. He says, and what do you think about the opinion of the Marsha on such and such a page? He says, I don't know. So he says, you're not a maskil, you're just an Amoritz. You're just ignorant. The original Maskilim were very highly learned people, but there was no light in what they were doing. They called themselves the historians called them the enlightened ones, but they were never not the enlightened ones. Anyway, so the meaning, the Apikorsim back in the times of the Talmud were people who believed that there is a God, that God created the world, and then he left it. They took Hashemayim, Shemayim, Hashem, V'ha'aretz, Natan B'vnei Adam, they took it very literally, that God is in heaven, and he's not over here. And here on earth is, So the rabbis made two takanot. One of them was that the verse, Baruch Hashem Elokei Yisrael min ha'olam va'ad ha'olam. Blessed is Hashem, the God of Israel, min ha'olam va'ad ha'olam. From world to world. In other words, God is in all worlds. Now originally, that verse said, Baruch Hashem Elokei Yisrael min ha'olam. It didn't have the additional words, va'ad ha'olam. So they added the words, va'ad ha'olam, so to make it clear that our faith is that God is not just somewhere else, he's here, not only over here, he's everywhere, right? But then they made another takana. Another takana was that when we say hello to each other, we should say hello using God's name. Which of God's name do we use when we say hello?
Shalom.
Shalom. Shalom is one of God's names. Okay? Not an easy one to live with. I can tell you.
One should actually use that word rather than saying hello. One should say
Yeah.
shalom.
Yeah. Now, so what's the meaning of that? How is that going to change a person who doesn't believe that God is present in this world, and you say hello to him using God's name? That's going to make a difference in his belief. It might, right? But but how? Okay, good. Of course, it might. Otherwise, they obviously the rabbis thought so. Otherwise, they wouldn't be part of the Tikkun, right? So how does it make a difference? Now, the word shalom. What does the word mean?
Peace.
Yeah. Okay. Now go deeper. And what does the word mean?
Complete.
Complete. Speak up. You're on air.
Complete.
Okay, good.
Wholeness,
completeness, right? So when you say shalom to somebody, in a certain sense, you're saying, I'm only complete together with you, and you're complete with me, right? Together we make up a whole, right? And is that a religious statement or not?
It's a karma statement.
That's good. Very good.
If you're religious, I think it's a religious statement.
It's a religious statement. You understand? The presence of Hashem can only be experienced when you feel complete together with another person. Okay? So when you say shalom to someone who presumably doesn't believe in the presence of God in this world, and in the way you say shalom, you're actually sincerely conveying, brother, I'm only complete together with you, then they will experience the presence of Hashem in this world. Okay?
We're talking about one person, or we're talking about
no, everybody, but I'm just saying, you don't say shalom to 100 people at once, unless you're getting up to do a public, comedy show like you usually do, but like any time that you're saying shalom to someone, whether it's to one or whether it's to many, right? And you say it sincerely, then the people actually will feel it. Okay, and that's what Reb Shlomo just said. You can say shalom and it's almost meaningless. It's just Emily Post. You heard of her?
Emily Post? Yeah.
Are you serious? You're from the United Kingdom.
I'm curious. I've been here too long.
Emily Post was big for her.
Yeah, but there's no such thing. They don't let you eat breakfast. They don't let you eat breakfast in England if you don't know Emily Post.
Emily Post.
It's the Shulchan Aruch on how to be polite.
Oh, no way. I'll look it up.
Emily Post is American.
No, nobody in
Very
America
English,
was polite. It was from England. Look it up, you'll
Could
see.
be Canada, Canadian.
No.
Canadians are very polite.
Eh?
The most polite in the world are the Israelis and Americans.
Absolutely. You know the story about the two Israelis. This couple from Israel that worked all their life on the shuk, and they finally they're going on a cruise. And everybody out there, forgive us, but it's for Chodesh, a little bit of laughter is going to be fine. So they're sitting there on this fancy cruise in this fancy dining room, and there's an English couple and an American couple sitting with them at the table. And the Englishman says to his wife, "Honey, can you please pass the honey?" And she passes him the honey. And the Israelis are observing everything. And then the American woman says to her husband, she says, "Sugar, can you please pass the sugar?" And he passes the sugar. And she says to his wife, she says to her husband, "Behemi, can you pass the steak?"
It loses in the translation.
Behema means animal.
Ah.
Okay. Anyway, Israeli expertise.
I just saw a head of a bull or a cow being like, you know, in the ship. I took a picture of it. I'm like, it was really like with the teeth. He was like, wow, this is really it's happening.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so that's the point. In other words, there's the deed and there's the light that feels the mitzvah, right? So if your neshama is involved, it's altogether different. If your neshama is not involved, it's not the same. B'tzarenu, now, so what's the problem? So it's much to our distress. Yesh Yehudim shekashe lahem im ha'or. There are Jews who have a hard time with light, not just Jews. Im ha'ma'ever. There are people who have a hard time with the beyond. Hem rotzim shakol yeh muvan. They want everything to be understood, mugdar, defined, v'nitan lemedida, and measurable. Right? You remember? Did you watch the Channukah animation the other week, Michal?
Yes.
So you see, you ever saw it? It's called, look up Channukah lights on YouTube. It's a beautiful animation. It's a beautiful animation. So, it's Tzifi. And hi, Tzifi. Would you like to join us today? Maybe, yeah. Give her a book. So, and that's, if you remember the scene there, have you seen that animation called Lights? Channukah Lights, it's a masterpiece. It's 22 minutes, it's good that. Anyway, it's on YouTube. Anyway, so so Alexander comes to Israel, Alexander the Great, right? And he's encountering Yiddishkeit. And so there's a little animated scene where he's trying to measure an aleph, and he's taking out his Greek instruments to measure it, to define it. But every time he tries to measure it, it sort of just shows up differently. It shows up, and that's the point. In other words, that there is a beyond that you can't measure. You can't understand it. It's like, the Rambam says, for example, when you say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, God is one. What do you mean when you say God is one? Can you define that?
God is shalom. Complete.
Is this shalom?
It's not shalom because there's nothing in it.
No. Is it shalom? Is it a whole glass?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you say that God is complete, does it mean the same way as this? Or when you say this is one glass, do you mean the same thing as God is one?
Possibly. It depends how you're looking
Well,
at the glass.
Are there other glasses?
Yes.
So, but there's only one God, right? See, the reason that you say that this is one is because it has a beginning and an end. It could be measured, it could be weighed, right? If you wouldn't see the beginning or the end of this, would you say that it's one? No, you wouldn't know, right? So the Rambam says that when you say that God is one, or anything you will say about God, all you really say, but the only real definition what you can really say is He's one and not two or more, right? But we don't have any language to actually describe God because God is beyond us. If we would have language to describe God accurately, if you say God is this, wherever way you finish the sentence, you are already wrong. Because no human being can say God is this or God is that, God is that. So we say God is compassionate. Does that mean that God is compassionate in the same way that you understand compassion? No. So when we say God is compassionate, what we really mean to say is that He's the source of compassion. God is wise. Does that mean that God has a much better computer than you do? And that's His wisdom. In which case it's wrong, because that means that, okay, today I can't measure it. Tomorrow maybe I could. No, God's wisdom is altogether different from our wisdom. So when we say God is a chacham, what we're saying is that He's the source of chacham. When we say God is chesed, He's the source of chesed.
So why don't we describe God as sources of like Yitzhak, like bad attributes?
He's the creator of that too. That's right.
Yeah.
We don't deny that. But we don't praise God for that. But we do actually. But I mean, in a certain sense, like if you hear that somebody passed away, there's a bracha baruch dayan ha'emet. But it's you praise God for everything. With all your heart, v'shnei yisrecha, with both your yetzer hatov and your yetzer hara. So now there are people who have a hard time with the beyond. And you go into a Chassidish shul, do the ladies shake hands? You ever shake hands with a Chassidish lady, like a Haredi lady? No? You ever try?
No.
Okay, go try it. Come back tomorrow and tell us. But I've met some people that put out your hand to say Shalom Aleichem, and they'll barely touch your hand. So, okay, now I don't want to pass judgment. I don't know why they do that, why they have that custom, and so on. But there are people that, like, I told you the story. Shlomo was in Russia when I was still communist Russia, and by the time he left, he had given away everything he had, and he was being accompanied by a young man to the airport, and this young lad is crying, and Shlomo says, "Why are you crying?" And he says, "You gave everybody a gift, and I didn't get anything." He gave away every sefer he had. He gave away his talents. He gave away his tefillin. Right? This is the former Soviet Union. People didn't have things, and the only thing that Shlomo had left was his yarmulke. Remember the story? So he gave him his yarmulke. And the plane landed somewhere in England. I don't know what, but and he had to catch another plane. But he hadn't put on tefillin yet that day. And he sees this, this Chassidish Yid, and he runs up to him and he hugs him. And the guy says, "You're mistaken. I don't know you." So Shlomo says, "No, I'm not mistaken. I haven't seen a Jew all day. I'm so happy to see a Jew." Right? So and then Shlomo says to him, right? Like, in other words, like, so for a lot of people, like, do I know you? Like, why do you like me? Like, you're not allowed to like me, I don't know you, right? And so someone says, can I borrow your tefillin? And the guy says, maybe you should first have a yarmulke. Shlomo says, I bless you to wear the yarmulke that I'm wearing right now. But in any case, a lot of people are afraid of light. You know who used to quote that a lot? Nelson Mandela also used to quote Shlomo on that. I don't know if he was quoting Shlomo, but there's a whole thing about what are you more afraid of? Your lousy past or your uncertain future? A lot of people, when they start going to therapy, right, They prefer the familiarity of a lousy past to the uncertainty of a better future. Doesn't make sense, does it? But that's reality. People like that which is familiar, even if it's not the best thing. They want to know, Okay?
They say if everybody would put their troubles into one box, everybody would take out their own rather than somebody else.
Yeah,
Because
well, that's
familiarity.
Yeah, familiarity and so on, right? So that's and people are afraid of light. We read something really beautiful yesterday. Can you give me that book? It's a teaching from Reb Nachman. I happen to know about it because Moshe Shabbos, somebody called me to verify a footnote over here. So I actually got to look at this page. So Reb Nachman says there are two kinds of stories. There are stories which put you to sleep, and there are stories which wake you up. You read it?
Yeah. I think I read it over Shabbos.
It was on last week's parsha.
Yeah.
What's the difference between the dreams, the stories of the holy people and of the unholy people? The dreams and the stories of the unholy people put you more to sleep. That means that while they are sleeping, they're dreaming stories that put them more to sleep. The tzaddik, the holy person, dreams stories which wake him up. But even deeper, the tzaddik dreams of the story which will wake up the whole world. Okay. So the point is, people. Is that my phone? What are you more afraid of? The knowledge of how great you can be and you're not? Or others people are afraid of that. Because, oh my gosh, then I better do something about it. Right? I could have been this, I could have done this, I could have, etc., and I didn't, right? Like once Reb Shlomo said the following definition of heaven and hell. Like when we come upstairs, we're going to be shown two movies. One movie of what we could have been like, and one movie of what our life was like. If they're alike, then you're in heaven, right? But if they're not, if you're shown this movie about that you could have been this awesome person and you weren't, oy vey, right? So people are afraid of the beyond. They're afraid of, people are afraid, I've said many times, hi, good morning, how are you? And you smile, and you know what that means. Please don't tell me, right? How are you? I don't really have time for you. If somebody asks you for how are you, and then you say, oh, I'm so glad you asked. Do you have maybe 10 minutes to sit and talk with me? He did that. He skipped school the other day because he sat and talked with somebody, but that's gewalt. It's awesome. Okay? Yeah. I know.
Somebody clutches their heart and hangs on to you and say, I do not find. But you're right. When I say, how are you? I expect the one word fine.
All of us, most of us do. We're being polite, right? But we're so it's and also one of the things I try to practice is that when I'm around with a bunch of other people, for bringing or whatever, I really try to keep my mouth shut and listen instead of talk. You learn more by hearing and by listening than you do by talking. Okay? So, אני זוכר, פעם אחת בבית האהבה בתפילה, one Shabbos in the House of Love and Prayer that was in Berkeley, בשבת בבוקר, התפילות היו ממש עד לב השמיים. Shabbos morning, we were davening, the prayers were reaching to the heavens. פתאום ראיתי שני יהודים שעמדו בחוץ ודיברו. I saw two Yidden standing outside talking. יצאתי עליהם ואמרתי, I went out and I said, חברים, למה שלא תיכנסו? My friends, why don't you come in? ענה לי אחד מהם, so one of them answered me and he said, שמע, listen, אני יהודי, I'm a Jew, ואני יודע מה זאת תפילה, I know what prayer is about. זאת לא הפעם הראשונה, it's not my first time. ואני רואה אתכם שם עם דמעות בעיניים, I see you guys in your prayers with tears in your eyes. I didn't knock yet, I just saw him. And I see you with tears in your eyes. Need another book. Thank you. And he says, זה מאוד מפריע לי, it's very disturbing, כי זה לא מתאים לשבת. It's not appropriate for Shabbos. בשבת לא בורחים, we don't cry on Shabbos. So החבר'ה אמרו נשמת כמו אש. The חבר'ה were in the middle of the Nishmas prayer at the time. They were davening it like fire. Yosef was sort of reviewing from yesterday, page 96. גוואלד, כמובן הם לא בכו מצער, אלא מעומק. They weren't crying from pain, they were crying from the depth of everything.
They what?
They weren't crying from pain, they were crying from how deep, because it was so deep, bless you. Right? מהייתה הבעיה של היהודים האלה, what was their problem? קשה להם עם המעבר. They were having a hard time with connecting to beyond. And truth is, we all have that problem. Some people go a bit more beyond, some people go a bit more beyond than that, but everybody's afraid of going really totally beyond. Okay? That's one of the things that they have to do when you go to the army, is they gotta get you to the place where you're ready to go beyond. Right? Like, Mesiras Nefesh. If you don't have Mesiras Nefesh, they won't take you. They'll try to teach you how to have Mesiras Nefesh and how to break through those barriers. But you've got to be able to break through the barriers. There's an elderly rabbi in the neighborhood, Rabbi Rosenthal. Should be well. So he told me the story about his great-grandfather, how they made Aliyah. They were living in New York, and he had two daughters. And must have been around the turn of the century also. And he overhears the older daughter telling the younger daughter, who was Rabbi Rosenthal's great-grandmother, she says to him, when we grow up, we'll marry modern Jews, a doctor, a lawyer. Anyway, he heard that. He went into the kitchen, told his wife, we're packing right now and we're leaving for Eretz Yisrael. And that night they were on the boat. And his great-grandmother has left over 1,000 descendants, right? But, you pack up. I know one of the Gaborim of the Channukah Rebbe for many, many years. And he told me that one night he was walking in the street in Beit V'Gam with the Channukah Rebbe, and they were right near a phone booth. The Channukah Rebbe said, call your wife now and tell her to pack up and come with the kids. And he did. And she did. Like on the spot.
This was what was this?
I don't know, 30 years ago, whatever. But right now, pack up and it's time to come. Then there was this Yid that made Aliyah because he was on the plane flying to the States. His business, he lived in the States, and his business was importing from the Gush Katif, vegetables and things like that for the States. So he was on the plane on 9/11 going back to the States, and then in the midair, the plane had to turn around because of the attack on the Twin Towers. So he came back and he realized Hashem is saying, this is your home over here. Called up his wife. She had 9 kids. And he said, pack up and come. And they did it. But that was like already a heavenly intervention, you know what I mean? But, you know, that it tzaddik tells you, move now, you know? So the people have trouble with the me'ever. How far are you ready to go beyond? Right? There are stories about Chassidim that the rabbis said to him, like I just heard it last night. The rabbi said to this person, "Give me everything you own." You have to have a lot of faith that your Rebbe knows what he's doing and that this is your Rebbe to do that. There's a story with the Alter Rebbe and his grandson, the Tzemach Tzedek. He's a son or the grandson, but so he received like, you know, a certain amount of money as a dowry. And Dr. Rebbe asked him, so what are you going to do with the money? So he said, I'm going to invest it with this wealthy man in town. Dr. Rebbe said, I have a better idea. Give it to me and I'll take care of it. We'll use it for the Mos Chosadim or whatever. And he said, no, I'll invest it with with this man. He's an honest man and so on. Anyway, a few months later, that wealthy man went bankrupt and there was nothing left. And his grandson comes and says, I don't have any money. He says, I suggested to you that there was a safer place to put your money. And he tells him that, you should take a lesson from a simple, ordinary chassid. And he tells him the story that he was traveling once, and he stayed at an inn, and of this Yid, who, like in some way off the road town, and he said to him, like, you never get a chance to hear Kaddish, you never get a chance to hear Torah reading, So he says, well, what should I do? So he says, well, it's time that you should move into a Jewish community. And Dr. Rebbe says he got up the next morning and there were all these wagons packed up. And the guy literally packed everything up with his family and the cows and whatever animals they had. And the tzaddik said, and the Dr. Rebbe told them, he had no questions. Packed up right away and went. Okay. So that's me'ever. That's going beyond the limitations of the way you think it needs to be. You think it needs to be like this, and you're going me'ever, you're going beyond. Okay? So may הייתה הבעיה ב4 lines, 5 lines from the bottom, 96. may הייתה הבעיה של היהודים האלה, קשה להם עם המעבר. They were having trouble with the beyond. האמת היא שגם כדי לאהוב אדם אחר, אתה צריך להיות מעבר לעצמך. Truth is that to love another person, to really love them, you have to be beyond yourself. In other words, to love them and to do for them what's good for them, rather than to do what's good for you. In other words, rather than it being just on your terms, you have to be beyond yourself. Ki ani, I'm I, ואתה, you're you, נכון? אתה חמוד, you're very sweet, אני מחבב אותך, I like you, I appreciate you, but still, אז מה? page 97. איך מתעלים מעל הגבולות הצרים של האני הזה? How do you get out of these narrow limitations and borders of the I? So he says, I can only achieve that through my light. By being in touch with that little something which makes me connected to my beyond, to beyond myself. Right? There's a special halacha by Channukah that you don't find by other mitzvahs. If there's some reason that I'm not lighting candles, if I see somebody else lighting, I can make a sha'asa nisim v'avesenu on those candles. Is there any greater me'ever than that? And when he says, is there any greater beyond than that, it basically means that, the laws of making a bracha are very, very strict, because we're not allowed to make a bracha levatel, or we're not allowed to make a bracha for no reason. So if you're making a bracha, if the halacha says that you can make a bracha on somebody else's light, it means you really have to appreciate somebody else's light. Right? And most of us usually just appreciate our own light. Right? Yeah, you maybe you laugh at a comedian's jokes, or you enjoy hearing a good lecture and so on. There's no problem with that. But do you really appreciate that the other person is so brilliant in giving such a great lecture, or would you rather have been able to say that yourself? Right? You would have liked to be the one to be able to get up there and say that, right? Okay, but you say you appreciate that somebody else said it, right? But to not even think that way, to just say, wow, I'm just so glad that God put so many talented people into the world, right? And to really appreciate so many different talents and so on, that's beyond yourself, to really appreciate it. Ha'or shel Channukah hu mamash orosh shel Mashiach. The light of Channukah is the light of Mashiach. Neir ishu beito, mamash yachad, ani ishti v'hayiladim sheli. To really be together, husband, wife, and children, and so on, to really be as one, that's beyond. Tishmu acharei ma she'asu lanu ha'Yevanim, after what the Greeks did to us, chilulu et hamikdash, they desecrated the temple, v'ratzchu alfei Yehudim, they murdered thousands of Jews. Haitzi tzarich lisgoret daltei beiti. The natural thing is I should now want to shut the doors of my house. And if I see a Greek, I would naturally want to kick him away and kick him out. What am I doing instead on Channukah? I'm opening the door, the window, listen, my Greek brother. You know what your problem is? You never merited yet to see the true light. You've never had the opportunity to be beyond yourself. Like Reb Shlomo used to speak about Channukah lights as opposed to Greek lights. So the way he described it was that Greek lights are the lights that you light up your shopping center with, right? It's lights that only show you the superficiality of everything, right? Holy lights is Channukah lights. It's Rosh Chodesh today, right? And Reb Shlomo says one of the lessons about the fact that we count by the moon is because the moon doesn't have any light of its own, it only reflects light, right? And that we know that our light is not our light, it's only bright if we're actually reflecting Hashem's light. So he says an amazing thing. Everybody knows, why is the moon smaller than the sun? right? Because in the Torah it says, "Vayaseh Elokim Mishnei Hamaorot." God made the two luminaries. Then it says Hamaor Gadol, the Hamaor Gadol, the Hamaor Hakatan, the big luminary and the small one, the sun and the moon. So the Medrash says, according to the beginning of the verse, these two luminaries were originally the same size. And the moon then came and complained, what two kings are going to use one crown, right? In other words, it's not right that we should both be exactly the same. So the Medrash says that God said, okay, to the moon, so you're going to be smaller. So the pshat that we normally learn in that Medrash is that the moon was, so to speak, punished. You complained, you didn't want to share the same crown, so now you're going to be smaller. But Reb Shlomo says an amazing teaching, and I don't know where he took it from, maybe it's his own. He says the moon was saying to Hashem, is that all the light there is? Just the light that allows you to see the superficiality of everything? And Hashem says, because you asked for it, you're going to be the one to provide the light which allow people to see more deeply, right? When do people, what's so special about moonlight versus sunlight? Sunlight, it's just lets you see the surface. Moonlight, in moonlight, you get to see the inner light of a person. So, but in order to do that, you have to do like the moon. You have to get smaller. You got to be mevatel yourself. Okay. So, because you have to, in other words, to make space to see the other person. If you're walking around thinking like, I'm so great and I'm so special, you're never going to you're never going to listen to anybody. You're never going to give anybody a chance because you're just so full of yourself. To make space to receive the other, yeah. But this chassid came into, I think, to the Tzemach Tzedek, and he says, Rabbi is terrible. Everybody's stepping all over me. So he says, if you would make yourself a little bit smaller, there would be room for people to walk on the Beis Medrash without stepping on you. See, you can see the Lubavitcher gets it right away. Yeah. Okay. And so he says, I'm lighting the candles at the door of my home, and I want to illuminate the whole world. That's me, because I'm beyond myself. I don't want the light just for myself. Do the goyim deserve light? After everything they've done to us? A lot of people say, let them just keep on walking in the dark. But on Channukah, when the light that God says in the Torah, when that special divine light is illuminating within my soul, I get a good eye on the whole world. Suddenly I start to feel compassion for the whole world. So we should be blessed. What? If you look on Pesach, you don't say only the first day. You say the whole Hallel. The rest of Pesach, you don't say the whole Hallel. You only say half Hallel, because the Malachim said what? Because the voice in heaven said, "What my creations are drowning," and you're saying Hallel, right? So in other words, you gotta be conscious of that.
Could one say that since one needs to have compassion for the goyim, It's axiomatic that we should have compassion for ourselves.
You can't have compassion for somebody else if you don't have any for yourself. מזבח חודש בציין תכין ויעיל עשרי חודש נעלה עליו מזבח חודש בציין תכין ויעיל עשרי חודש נעלה עליו מזבח חודש בציין תמבחין ביילס רב חודש נעלה Thank you for being here, everyone.
Is that cool?
Huh?
What's that?
Mizbeach Chodesh is a verse in the Musaf for Rosh Chodesh.